babies. My goodness.
A fisherman found twin babies floating in a basket, but who left them there and what will happen to them next? What do you think happened to the twins next? Comment below your theory and don't forget to like and subscribe to uncover the full story. The morning sun stretched lazily over the horizon, casting golden ripples across the waters of the Ogun River. The small fishing village of Makoko, nestled on the edge of Lagos, stirred awake with the hum of daily life. Children chased each other barefoot along wooden walkways. Women pounded yam in large mortars, and the salty breeze carried the chatter of traders preparing for the day. But away from the noise of the waking village, a lone fisherman prepared his boat. Adewale was not a man of wealth or high status. He owned no land, no business, no treasure beyond the patched-up canoe he rowed daily and the nets he repaired with his own hands. Yet, among the villagers, he was known for his honesty and his heart. That morning, something weighed on him. The night had been restless, filled with strange dreams of water rising, of voices whispering in languages he couldn't understand. But like any man hardened by the demands of survival, he shook off the unease, pushing his boat into the cool embrace of the river. The paddle dipped into the water, steady and practiced. Adewale's sharp eyes scanned the river's surface, searching for the slight ripples that betrayed the movements of fish beneath. For an hour, nothing unusual occurred, just the rhythm of the water and the call of distant birds. Then he saw it. At first, it looked like a clump of drifting wood, swaying gently with the current. But as his boat drew closer, the object revealed itself. A basket, crudely woven from bamboo reeds, bobbing in the water as if the river itself carried it with care. Adewale frowned. Who would leave such a basket in the middle of the river? He reached out with his paddle, pulling it toward him. As the basket settled against the side of his canoe, he heard it. A sound so soft, so fragile, it almost blended with the splash of the waves. A whimper. His heart lurched. Carefully, with trembling fingers, he pushed back the cloth covering the basket. His breath caught in his throat. Inside, nestled together like two halves of the same soul, were twin babies, a boy and a girl. Their tiny fists clenched, their eyes shut tight against the morning sun, their fragile bodies wrapped in damp fabric. For a moment, Adewale froze. His fisherman's hands, hardened by years of labor, had never held something so delicate. He glanced around, half expecting someone to jump out from the banks and claim them, to say it was all a mistake. But the river was empty, silent. Only him, the boat, and the impossible sight before his eyes. Oluwami, he whispered under his breath. My God. He lifted the basket gently into his boat, shielding the babies with his arms. Their warmth, their tiny movements, stirred something inside him he had not felt in years, since his wife's passing, since the silence of a home once filled with laughter. The boy stirred first, opening his eyes just slightly. They were dark, deep, and glimmered with something almost unnatural. The girl followed, her small face scrunching up as she let out a faint cry. The sound echoed strangely across the river, bouncing back in a way that made Adewale shiver. He sat there, rocking gently with the current, trying to understand. Who could abandon two children like this? Why in the river? And how were they still alive? Adewale knew the village would ask questions. They would not accept this easily. In Makoko, twins carried deep cultural meanings. In some tribes, they were celebrated as a blessing from the gods. In others, they were feared as omens, children who carried curses. But what choice did he have? He could not leave them here. He could not abandon them to the mercy of the river. His hands tightened on the paddle. As he turned his boat back toward the village, the wind shifted suddenly. The once still air now carried a sharp chill, though the sun burned bright. A ripple ran across the water, stronger than the usual current. Adewale glanced down and saw fish scattering beneath the surface, moving in frantic swirls around the canoe. His heart pounded. Something was different about these children. Still, he whispered softly to them, "You are safe now. I will not let harm come to you." The boy's tiny hand reached out, gripping his finger with surprising strength. Adewale felt tears sting his eyes. For the first time in years, he was not just a fisherman drifting alone on the river. He was holding life, a mystery, a responsibility. By the time he reached the village shore, a small crowd had gathered, their eyes widening as they saw what he carried. Murmurs rippled through the air, questions, fears, superstitions. Adewale stood firm, the basket clutched to his chest. "I found them in the river," he declared, his voice steady, but his heart racing. Twins, a boy and a girl. The chief's face grew dark. The priestess gasped. And the villagers whispered, some with awe, others with suspicion. That was the moment Adewale's simple life ended, and the prophecy, though he did not yet know it, had just begun. The crowd thickened as Adewale stepped onto the wooden dock, the basket clutched protectively in his arms. The babies stirred, their faint cries weaving through the murmurs of the villagers. Men, women, and children pressed closer, some craning their necks to see, others covering their mouths in disbelief. "What is he carrying?" one woman whispered, pulling her son behind her. "Children, twins," another murmured, her tone caught between awe and fear. By the time Adewale set foot on the sandy path that cut through Makoko, the entire village seemed to have gathered. The chief, Oba Falade, a tall man with a staff carved from ebony wood, stepped forward, his brows furrowed. Beside him stood Iya Morenike, the village priestess, her beaded necklace shimmering in the sunlight, her eyes already fixed on the twins. Adewale, though trembling inside, stood tall. He placed the basket carefully on the ground, letting the crowd see. Gasps broke the air. Two tiny faces, one boy and one girl, stared back at them. Innocent, fragile, yet carrying an aura that unsettled everyone present. "From where?" the chief demanded, his deep voice echoing. "The river," Adewale replied. His words carried weight, though his throat was dry. "I found them drifting. Alone." The villagers erupted into noise. Some shouted, "Blessing," while others hissed, "Abomination?" Aya Moreniki raised her hand, silencing them. Her voice, sharp and commanding, rang out. "These children are not ordinary. Twins found in the water. This is no accident. The gods have sent them, either as a gift or as a test." Oba Falad's eyes narrowed. "Or as a curse. The river does not give life without reason. Something dark lies behind this." The villagers began to argue among themselves. "Twins bring wealth and fortune, don't you see?" one elder insisted, nodding firmly. "Fortune?" another spat. "Storms follow twins. Sickness follows twins. They should be returned to the river before misfortune falls upon us all." The babies began to cry at once, their wails rising over the chaos. The sound pierced the air, and for a brief moment, the wind shifted violently, scattering dust and shaking the wooden huts. The crowd froze, their eyes wide with fear. "All of you, silence." Aya Morenike's voice was a whip. She stepped closer to the basket, her dark eyes locked on the infants. She bent low, studying them as though reading the secrets etched in their tiny faces. Then she looked at Adewale. "You should not have brought them here." Adewale's jaw tightened. "And what will you have me do? Leave them to drown? Let the fish consume them?" His voice cracked but carried conviction. "They are children. Innocent. Innocence means nothing if the spirits claim them," the chief growled. "Our ancestors warned us. What the river gives, it also takes." A hush fell. All eyes turned to the chief, waiting for his judgment. Adewale's stomach knotted. He could already feel the weight of their stares, the whispers that would soon turn to accusations. But before the chief could speak further, a voice rose from the crowd. An old woman, her back bent with age, hobbled forward with the help of a stick. Her name was Mama Bisi, the oldest in the village. Her voice, though weak, carried surprising strength. "Do not forget," she said, pointing a trembling finger at the twins. "Our ancestors also spoke of prophecy. That one day, the waters would deliver children. Children who would change the fate of this land. For better or for worse." Her words rippled through the crowd, igniting new debates. Some crossed themselves in fear. Others muttered prayers, and still others looked at the babies with a strange reverence. Oba Falade scowled. "Prophecies are twisted words meant to bind us to fear. We will not gamble our lives on them." But Adewale had already made his choice. With steady hands, he lifted the basket once more, cradling it against his chest as though shielding the children from the world. "They are mine now," he declared, his voice firm, cutting through the noise. "If no one else will care for them, I will. I do not fear them. I will raise them." The priestess's eyes widened, her lips parting as though she wanted to protest. But she said nothing. The chief glared but did not move. The villagers, sensing the weight of Adewale's decision, fell into uneasy silence. The twins, as if understanding, quieted. Their cries ceased, replaced by small coos. One of them, the girl, opened her eyes fully for the first time. They were startling, shimmering like deep pools, reflecting the sunlight in a way no ordinary eyes should. Gasps spread again, whispers hissing through the air. Adewale tightened his grip, his heartbeat thundering in his chest. He didn't know what destiny awaited these children, didn't understand why they had come to him. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He could not abandon them. Turning his back on the crowd, he began walking toward his small hut at the edge of the village. Each step felt heavier than the last, but his resolve did not waver. Behind him, the murmurs swelled again, some calling him brave, others calling him foolish. But as the villagers argued and the priestess stared after him with haunted eyes, a storm began to gather far in the distance. Dark clouds formed on the horizon, lightning flickering faintly within them. And though no one yet realized it, the arrival of the twins had already begun to shift the balance of their world. Days turned into weeks, and weeks bled into months. Adewale, once known only as the humble fisherman, became the center of every whisper in Makoko. Some hailed him as a man chosen by the gods. Others spat curses under their breath when he passed. But inside his modest hut, the world was quieter. The twins, whom he named Taiwo and Kehinde, following the Yoruba tradition of naming twins, grew stronger with each passing day. Their tiny hands grasped at life. Their cries filled the air, and their laughter. Their laughter was unlike anything Adewale had ever heard. Yet there was something strange, something that unsettled even his strong heart. The first time it happened was on a night of heavy rain. The storm raged outside, pounding against the wooden walls of his hut. Adewale cradled the twins, trying to hush their cries. As Taiwo's voice rose in panic, the hut began to shake. Pots rattled. The fire almost extinguished itself under a sudden gust of wind, yet the door was tightly shut. Then, as Kahinda began to laugh, the flames flared brighter, burning with a strength unnatural for such small sticks of wood. The storm outside slowed, as though obeying her. Adewale froze, clutching them close, his heart pounding like a drum. He whispered a prayer under his breath. "Oluwa, kini ei, my lord, what is this?" Over time, more incidents followed. Whenever Taiwo grew angry, the river outside their hut churned violently. When Kehinda was happy, fish swam closer to the shore, as though drawn to her joy. He tried to keep these things hidden. The village already eyed him with suspicion. If they saw the strange powers surrounding the twins, fear would turn into something far more dangerous. But rumors had a way of spreading. One evening, as Adewale mended his fishing nets, he noticed shadows gathering outside his hut. A group of villagers stood there, their faces tense. "We have seen it," one man muttered. "When the boy cries, the winds rise. When the girl laughs, the river stirs," another added. "These are not children," a woman spat, clutching a charm tied around her neck. "They are spirits wearing the faces of infants." Adawale's fists clenched, but before he could speak, Mama Bisi's frail voice rang out. The old woman had joined them, leaning on her stick. "You fools!" she snapped, her cloudy eyes fierce. "Do you not see? Power does not mean curse, it means destiny, as these children are marked." Her words silenced the crowd, but unease lingered in their eyes. They dispersed reluctantly, muttering to themselves. Adewale, shaken, returned inside and held the twins close. That night, as the moon bathed the village in silver, a stranger arrived. She was a woman cloaked in a faded wrapper, her hair covered, her steps hesitant as though each one carried the weight of fear. She slipped into the village unnoticed, her eyes scanning every hut until they landed on Adewale's. From a distance, hidden in the shadows, she watched. Through the small window, she saw the twins lying peacefully, their tiny chests rising and falling in sleep. Her face drained of color. She pressed a trembling hand to her lips, a soundless sob escaping her. It was them, her children. The memory flooded back. The night she had placed them in the basket, tears burning her eyes as she pushed them into the river's current. She had no choice. A shadow darker than death itself had hunted her. A cult that believed her twins were the key to unlocking unspeakable power. Leaving them in the river was the only way to save them. But now they lived, and here, in the hands of a fisherman, their secret was still safe. Or was it? The woman's breath quickened. A twig snapped under her foot. Adewale's head lifted sharply. He stepped outside, eyes narrowing into the darkness. "Who is there?" His voice carried the weight of a man ready to defend. The woman's heart hammered. She stumbled back, retreating into the night. Her bare feet slapped against the earth as she fled, disappearing into the forest beyond the village. Adewale stood at the doorway, scanning the shadows. He saw nothing but the swaying trees, the whisper of leaves in the wind. Yet unease crawled over him, the same unease that had haunted him since the day he pulled that basket from the river. He returned inside, looking at the twins. They stirred as though sensing something, their small hands reaching out in their sleep. Adewale's chest tightened. Someone had been there, someone who knew, but he did not yet understand that the woman who fled was not his enemy, and that the real danger was drawing nearer with every breath. In the distance, beyond the forest, drums echoed faintly, dark, rhythmic, and unholy. The cult had not forgotten, and soon, the river would not be the only thing demanding what belonged to it. The rainy season came heavy that year. Dark clouds loomed above Makoko for weeks, the waters of the Ogun River rising higher than the villagers could remember. It was as though the skies themselves sensed the shift that had settled upon the land. Within Adewale's hut, the twins grew quickly. Their laughter brightened the air, their steps unsteady but full of life. Yet the strange happenings only deepened. Taiwo's anger could whip the wind into a frenzy, and Kehinde's joy could calm even the roughest tide. Adewale tried to hide it, tried to shield them from the eyes of the village. But secrets in Makoko had no place to rest. Word spread faster than fire. And soon, the village demanded answers. One night, under the pale glow of the moon, the elders called a gathering in the open square. Drums throbbed in the background, fires burned tall, and the villagers circled around, their faces lit with both fear and curiosity. Adewale stood at the center, the twins beside him, their small hands clinging to his legs. The chief, Oba Falade, leaned on his ebony staff, his expression grave. Beside him, Iyamornike, the priestess, swayed gently, her eyes half closed as though listening to whispers no one else could hear. "These children are not like others," Oba Falade's voice thundered. "We have seen storms rise and rivers swell when they are troubled. We have heard whispers of a prophecy, but prophecies bring only division and fear. I say we cast them out before the river itself consumes us all. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Some nodded, murmuring in agreement. Others shook their heads violently. They are blessings. Mama Bisi's frail voice rose from the crowd, trembling yet strong. Have you all forgotten the words of the ancients? The river would deliver children not born of curse, but of destiny. They will save this land in its darkest hour. That hour may be upon us. Murmurs grew louder, the village splitting down invisible lines. Destiny? One man barked. Or doom? Would you risk your children's lives for theirs? A woman cried. They bring storms. They bring hope. The air crackled with tension. And then, as though the moment had been waiting, Iya Mornike stepped forward. Her voice was low, yet it cut through the noise like a blade. The prophecy is true. Silence fell. Every eye turned to her. The old tales speak of it clearly, she continued, her voice steady but her gaze troubled. Twins born of the river, marked by powers no mortal can contain. If they rise with hearts of love, they will save us. If they rise consumed by darkness, they will destroy us all. A hush deeper than silence settled over the crowd. Even the flames seemed to flicker lower. Oba Falad's jaw tightened. His eyes glinted, not with fear, but with something else, greed. Then let us not leave it to chance. If they are power, then that power should serve the village. Serve me. Adewale's blood ran cold. He stepped forward, shielding the twins with his arms. They are children, not tools. They will not be your weapons. They belong to us all, the chief barked. No, Adewale shot back, his voice fierce, his eyes burning. They belong to no one but themselves. They are mine to protect. The villagers erupted again, shouting, arguing, some siding with the chief, others with Adewale. The square became a storm of voices, echoing with fear, greed, and desperation. And in the midst of it all, the twins clung tighter to Adewale, their small faces pressed against him, their bodies trembling as though they understood the weight of the chaos around them. Then something happened. The ground trembled beneath their feet. The fires swayed violently, though no wind blew. The river beyond the village roared louder, waves crashing against the shore. Villagers screamed, clutching one another. Taiwo's eyes glowed faintly, dark like the depths of the river. Kahinda's eyes shimmered bright, reflecting the flames. For a moment, the world itself seemed to bend around them, power too great for children to hold. And then, as quickly as it came, the trembling ceased. The flames calmed. The river quieted. The twins blinked, their faces innocent once again. But the villagers, they could not unsee what they had seen. Some dropped to their knees, bowing. Chosen ones, they whispered. Others fled in terror, shouting curses, spitting into the dirt. The divide was no longer invisible. The village had split in two, one side believing the twins to be saviors, the other believing them to be doom. And Oba Falade, standing tall with his staff, watched them with eyes hungry for power. In his mind, one thought grew like poison. If I can control them, I can control everything. As the crowd dispersed into the night, Adewale held the twins close, his heart heavy. He could feel the storm building, not in the sky, but among his people. He whispered to the children, though they could not yet understand. You are not curse. You are not weapon. You are hope. And I will keep you safe, even if it costs me everything. But in the shadows, beyond the circle of firelight, unseen eyes watched. The cult, the ones who had hunted the twins from birth, had found their trail again. The prophecy was no longer just a story. It was alive, and the world was already trembling under its weight. 7 years passed like shifting tides. The twins, Taiwo and Kahinda, no longer crawled at Adewale's feet, but ran freely along the wooden paths of Makoko. Their laughter echoed through the village, bright and innocent, but their presence was no longer seen as innocent by everyone. The strange happenings had only grown. Taiwo, whenever angered, could summon winds that tore roofs from huts. Kahinda, when delighted, could make crops bloom faster than the rains themselves. Their powers were undeniable now, too obvious to ignore. And with power came fear. The divide in the village had deepened. Some brought gifts to Adewale's hut, kneeling before the twins as though they were gods. Others spat curses on the ground, whispering that Adewale had cursed Makoko by keeping them alive. The chief, Oba Falade, hid his ambitions behind a mask of authority, but Adewale saw the hunger in his eyes each time he looked at the children. One afternoon, the sky grew heavy and dark. The air felt thick, suffocating, though there was no rain. Villagers gathered nervously as the winds rose suddenly, rattling trees and snapping branches. And then it struck. A storm unlike any Makoko had seen in decades slammed into the village. Waves crashed violently, flooding huts. Roofs tore away, wooden walkways shattered. The people screamed, clutching their children, scrambling to save what little they had. Through the chaos, all eyes turned to Adewale's hut, because the twins stood at its doorway. Taiwo's small fists were clenched, his eyes glowing faintly, his face twisted in fear. Kahinda's tears streamed down her cheeks, lightning flashing with each sob. The storm was not just nature, it was them. The villagers roared in anger. "Look at them," someone shouted. "They bring destruction," cried another. "They are demons." A mob formed, their rage fueled by fear. Oba Falad raised his staff, seizing the moment. "You see now, these children are no blessing. They are a curse. If we do not act, they will destroy us all." Adewale rushed forward, placing himself between the mob and the twins. His voice broke with desperation. "They are just children. They cannot control it, don't you see? They need guidance, not hatred." But his words were drowned by shouts of fury. "Sacrifice them! Throw them back into the river! End this before it ends us." The mob surged closer, torches blazing in their hands. Adewale's heart thundered, his arms spread wide, shielding the twins. His mind screamed prayers, but he knew prayers might not stop the storm about to fall. Not from the sky, but from his own people. And then, in the midst of chaos, a figure appeared at the edge of the square. A woman. Her wrapper was torn from travel, her hair tangled, her eyes haunted yet fierce. She pushed through the crowd, ignoring their curses, her gaze locked on the twins. It was the woman who had fled that night years ago. "No!" her voice rang out, strong and desperate. "They are not demons. They are mine." The crowd froze. Even the storm seemed to falter for a moment. Adewale's eyes widened as he turned to her. "Yours?" The woman stepped forward, her chest rising and falling with every breath. "Yes, I am their mother." Gasps broke the air. She dropped to her knees before the twins, tears spilling freely now. "I never wanted to leave you. I never wanted this fate for you. But I had no choice." Her voice cracked. She lifted her gaze to the villagers, her face twisted with pain. "A cult hunts them. A cult that believes their blood will unlock power beyond this world. I put them in the river to save them. If they had stayed with me, they would be dead already." Her words rippled through the crowd like thunder. Shock, disbelief, anger. "A cult?" someone muttered. "Lies!" another shouted. "She abandoned them," spat a woman. But others looked uneasy. The priestess, Iya Morinike, stepped forward, her eyes sharp. "She speaks truth. I have felt their shadow. Dark drums beat in the forest, calling for what they believe is theirs." The villagers erupted again, divided even more sharply. Some shouted that the twins must still be sacrificed. Others demanded protection. Adewale's chest burned with conflict. The woman's tears were real. He could feel her truth in the way she looked at Taiwo and Kahinde. Yet the twins had been his children too, his family. For 7 years, he had raised them, loved them. "They are mine," the woman whispered, clutching her chest. "They are mine too," Adewale answered, his voice trembling but firm. "And I will die before I let anyone harm them." But Oba Falad's booming voice silenced them all. Enough! He pointed his staff at the children. His eyes gleamed with greed, not fear. If the cult wants them, let them come. We will use their power before anyone else does. With them under my command, Makoko will rise above all villages. The mob gasped. Some cheered, others recoiled. The village was now fractured beyond repair. And as the storm raged overhead once more, as lightning split the sky, Adewale realized the battle was no longer about survival alone. It was about who would control the fate of the twins. Villagers blinded by fear, a leader hungry for power, or the cult drawing ever closer. In the shadows of the trees, hidden from sight, dark figures crouched. The cult had arrived. Their leader, cloaked in red and black, smiled as the storm illuminated his face. "The time has come," he whispered. "The river's children will be ours." The sky was a swirling canvas of gray and black as the Ogun River roared like a beast unleashed. Lightning ripped across the horizon, illuminating the village of Makoko in stark, fleeting flashes. The air was thick with tension, the kind that made hearts hammer and blood run cold. Adewale stood at the center of his hut, twins in his arms, their tiny faces pale but determined. Beside him knelt the woman, their mother, her eyes blazing with a mix of fear, resolve, and sorrow. Together, they had prepared for this moment, though none could predict its full fury. The cult had arrived. Cloaked in shadows and red fabric, the figures advanced silently, their leader stepping forward with a smirk that spoke of centuries of arrogance and cruelty. "You cannot hide them forever," he hissed. "The river gave them to you, fishermen. But the world will bow to power, and their power belongs to me." Adewale tightened his grip. "They are not yours. They are children." The leader laughed, low and chilling. "Children? They are instruments of destiny, and destiny belongs to those who claim it." The twins stirred in his arms. Taiwo's eyes flared dark, the winds of the storm responding to his fear. Kahinde's gaze shone bright, the lightning above seeming to bend toward her will. Adewale's heart tightened. He whispered softly to them, his voice both command and comfort. "Taiwo, Kahinde, control it. Use what you are, but remember who you are." The cult surged forward, weapons glinting, chanting in a language older than the village itself. The mother rose, her hands weaving protective charms in the air, her voice singing incantations that clashed with the cult's dark spells. And then the storm exploded. Wind ripped through the huts, waves smashed against the shore, and the river itself seemed to rise with anger. Taiwo lifted his small hands, channeling his fury. Gusts of wind twisted like serpents, slamming cult members against trees and throwing debris into the air. Kahinda's laughter rang out, and lightning danced at her fingertips, striking the ground near the intruders with blinding precision. Adewale and the twins' mother fought together, their movements synchronized, one shielding, one attacking, one guiding the children through the chaos. Oba Falade, who had hidden in the shadows until now, saw his opportunity. "With them under my command, I will control Makoko," he cried, stepping forward with his staff raised. But before he could approach, a massive wave, summoned by the twins' combined power, knocked him off his feet. The cult's leader roared in fury. "Enough!" he bellowed. He reached toward the twins, dark energy swirling around his hands. Adewale stepped forward, chest heaving, defiance etched into every line of his face. "No, you will not touch them," he shouted. And with that, he leapt between his children and the leader. In the chaos, Taiwo and Kahinde's powers surged uncontrollably. Winds and lightning intertwined, forming a protective barrier around them. But Adewale knew it was unsustainable. The energy was too great, even for them. And in that moment, he made a choice. "Run!" he yelled at the twins and their mother. "I will hold them off." The children hesitated, their small hands reaching toward him, eyes wide with fear. Adewale smiled through the tears streaming down his face. Go, live, protect each other. That is your power. With a final embrace, he pushed them toward safety. The mother grabbed their hands, sprinting toward the far edge of the village. Adewale turned to face the cult and Oba Falade alone. The clash was monumental. Spells collided with the raw force of nature. Adewale, though only a man, moved with every ounce of courage, drawing from the love he bore his children. Lightning struck, winds howled, the ground shook. And then, with one final surge of combined energy from the twins, feeling their father's love, their mother's protection, the cult leader and Oba Falade were thrown back, defeated, their dark plans dissolved in the storm. But Adewale, he could not escape the full force. A massive wave struck, sweeping him from sight. The twins screamed, tears burning their young faces. The mother cried out, but the river calmed, leaving only silence where Adewale had stood. The village, devastated but alive, emerged from the storm. The villagers, who had once feared the twins, now looked at them with awe and reverence. Mama Bisi approached, her eyes misty. They are safe, thanks to him, she whispered. The twins ran to the edge of the river, staring into the water as though searching for something they could no longer see. Kahinda whispered, Father. Taiwo's hand reached for her. The mother held them close. He gave everything for you. You must live and protect this land as he would have wanted. Years later, Taiwo and Kahinda grew into young guardians of Makoko, and they learned to control their powers, not for domination, but for protection. They healed the village, calmed the river, and became legends whispered in stories and songs. The prophecy had been fulfilled, not through darkness, but through love, sacrifice, and courage. The river had delivered twins, and they had saved the land. Adewale's name became immortal in Makoko, not just as a fisherman, but as a father who had given everything for his children, proving that the greatest power was not in magic nor in prophecy, but in the heart that dared to love unconditionally. And somewhere, far in the waters of the Ogun River, a gentle current whispered a promise, that the river's children would always watch over their home, their spirits intertwined with the land they had saved.